Hello everyone and welcome back to another Babylon 9's video. Not a potential income in this one, it's actually a potential departure of a player we both really like, Mike. Pablo Fornals. It's being linked with a move away to Real Betis this January transfer window. And the quote's coming out from X today saying that he could be nearing an exit with Real Betis hoping to complete a deal to sign him. Sad times. Fornals has provided some excellent moments in a West Ham shirt. He's definitely what you'd want in a West Ham type player, and the kind of attitude and the way he is at his mannerisms around the club. Top class person. Just hasn't really worked out for him in the last season and a half, really, under David Moyes. Your thoughts on this potential, Fornals departure midway through the season?
I'll do the sentimental stuff first, right? And I am the biggest person that says sentiment has no place in football. So I'm going to be a big, massive hypocrite here and do some sentiment. I absolutely adore him, and I'm genuinely really gutted it hasn't worked in the last year and a half, and we haven't seen that happy, positive Pablo that we'd seen in the last few years. Right, sentiment out of the way. It is necessary. We probably could and should have sold him in the summer. We may have got a little bit more for him then, but we renewed his contract to keep a value. So he's 18 months left, which is why now obviously Betis are looking at him, which means a reunion with Pellegrini. So in all honesty, for all parties, it's probably a good thing. Obviously, Pabs absolutely adores West Ham. However, since he fell out of favour with Moyes, he doesn't really seem to recover. There's been flashes in games which are just in moments, but ultimately it's not been the same Fornals that has given us so much. The work rate, the endeavour is always there, the honesty, the model professional has always been there, but nothing's really clicking for him on the pitch. And football is a cutthroat business. If you're not performing, you don't play, and he hasn't really been performing.
Or playing, really. I mean, if we take a look at his stats from, his time at West Ham, and, you can look at the minutes played there in the right-hand column. He came back in, all the way back in 2019. You could see the minutes he was playing in the Premier League, 2,100 in a 1920 season, over 2,500 in the next season, 2,800 the next one. Then it slowly started to regress. And, you look at this season, just 400 minutes in the Premier League with 15 appearances is a really small tally. So like you mentioned, the performance is dipped. He's a player we've always said we haven't played him to the best of his ability in terms of the structure as well, which has been it's been a big thing for David Moyes in the way he's played. But off that left-hand side, Pablo Fornals was excellent during the COVID season. Him, Bowen, Lingard, Antonio linked up really, really well. And it worked really, really well when he was kind of drifting inside.
The 21-22 season is the Europa League season, which he's had. That's where he had his most minutes for West Ham. He was insanely vital. You knew it was a big game when Pablo Fornals started. That was It's like we were making a joke like last year about Pablo. Isn't that it's a bit like that Jisung Park kind of moment of when when that player plays, it's a big important game because their work rate, the endeavour, everything they bring on that industrious side is there. But they also had that technical ability and also in which to kind of change some games. And yeah, it's frustrating how it's gone for him. Like I say, the time is right to move on. I think
so too. I think it's a shame because it weren't long ago that he was saying he wants to retire at West Ham. He clearly loves the club. That's what makes this transfer a lot more difficult than say someone like Said Benrahma, who is also another one that could potentially be leaving this January. But whenever Fornals has spoken, what he's saying is true. Firstly, and the emotion that he's bringing out onto the pitch and off the pitch around that dressing room was legit. He really did care for West Ham, and I think he'll be one of those players, always following West Ham now, watching out for scores. You get the odd Instagram post from him and stuff like that. And people will always remember Fornals for the positives, I think, as a West Ham
fan.
fan.
And I think if we were to do the unlikely win the Europa League, there'd probably be another video of Pablo Fornals filming himself in Spain, singing everywhere we go. Everything West Ham is massive. So, the personality is always been a big thing, hasn't it, with Fornals? And it's why everyone's liked him, and he has such an affinity with the fans. It's I think there's certain players that come from abroad that every now and then strike a chord, I think, with West Ham fans, and he has kind of done that. And I'm not looking at the football side at the moment, because if I look at the football side, I'd be a lot colder. But from a standpoint of his affinity with the fans and everything, it's been really well connected. Really, probably for the past 2 years, two and a half years, probably within his time, it's really grown, and there's been a really strong affinity to him, especially maybe not in the last year and a half, because it just hasn't been as good from him. However, there's always been, the fans have always wanted him to succeed.
Yeah.
I just think now the pace of the Premier League and the need to have pace,
it's massive.
It's so much that if you don't have that level of pace in the Premier League, especially if you want to be a counter-attacking team,
Yeah.
it becomes harder and harder. And we've seen that now with the fact that we're looking at Osman. We've looked at Rowe, etc. These are players that have blistering pace. Kudus has come in again at blistering pace. So you just kind of look at it and go, as we have said many a times, Fornals as an 8 is arguably where he needs to be.
Yeah.
It's not a position he's going to get in. He's not going to play over Ward-Prowse.
Yeah, I just don't think in this current David Moyes setup, like you say, in that counter-attacking style, especially playing out on the left, it's just not his game. I have no doubt we've always said Fornals technically one of our best players, if not our best player before Lucas Paqueta arrived, and he's always been that person that was created. Look in the season after lockdown, where it was still behind closed doors and we finished 6th. Look at the amount of assists that Fornals got in that season, and the amount of link ups that he had with, in particular, Jared Bowen. He was a very, very good player for us and very important player. And like you mentioned, when Fornals played in those big games, you knew it was a big game because, the work rate side and also the potential for the creativity or the outlet when we were in possession on the transition. So, yeah, I mean, it is a shame. I think I would have liked to have seen a little bit more from Fornals in terms of that end product. I think that's what frustrated fans a lot as well. He did have it in glimpses where he was one of those players where if he had time to think about the finish, he was worse. We've seen it with Antonio as well. He was much more built on instinct. And we saw, goals against Leicester at home, away at Anfield a couple of times. It was always on instinct. He was always naturally gifted at that. It was just when he had time to think or he was on the edge of the box, had a few touches. That's when his end products let him down in terms of, his goal scoring. But technically loved Fornals, absolutely loved watching him play. I would have loved to see him play more as an 8. It just doesn't fit that system. We never really played with kind of 2 8s like that. It never really fit into the Moyes system. And, I've known it's maybe a big call, but if Fornals went into that Arsenal side as an 8, he wouldn't look out of place, in my opinion. I think he would slot in nicely there. So it's never been an ability thing, excuse me, with Fornals. I just think, like you mentioned, the pace of the Premier League, the pace of how we play in the Premier League, probably just caught up to him in the end. And David Moyes is now looking for pace instead of that technical assurance.
Yeah, it kind of, it is what it is now with Fornals. And I'll say I'm gutted for him because I really wanted him to achieve more at West Ham, and the fact that I didn't feel his lip service when he was saying things such as he wanted to stay at West Ham for the rest of his career. I think that's a genuine, and that was something that I wouldn't have begrudged him, because he's one of those players like we sometimes get from players from abroad. They get such an affinity for West Ham and the fans, vice versa. But we have to move on. It's as simple as that. We have to move on. We're not going to play him as an 8. He certainly isn't a winger, although he's done a fine job for many a season for us in that position. As you say, he's always kind of threatened to look like he's going to hit another level, especially after the Europa League season, and how efficient he was for us.
Yeah.
But it just hasn't transpired. He was once talked about as the heir to Iniesta. I know that was Iniesta who said that, not no one else. Iniesta said he was the heir apparent, but it's just unfortunate. It's not something that's kind of happened. And obviously, if he goes to Betis, it's going back to Pellegrini, the guy who actually brought him to West Ham. So in some ways, it's kind of,
and he's going back to La Liga as well, which is more probably going to suit his style more, and he's going to play in a position under Pellegrini, hopefully, where he'll get the best out of him as well. He's still only 27.
No, exactly. I know. I don't begrudge him leaving. I think for once, this is probably the one time in recent time with some players, we're selling at the right time.
Yeah.
And no matter what, I think if Pabs ever came back again, end up as a player, I think he'd always get a warm reception at West Ham. It's a very
Definitely.
necessary deal to do. We are going to improve, maybe not immediately, but in the short term, but in the medium to long term, it is going to be improvement. It is going to add more threat if we're going to bring in, say, the likes of Osman because of the pace that he brings, that the power, and all of those aspects that we're probably keenly missing,
Yeah.
particularly down that left side. We've got the guile when we play Paqueta, but we don't have that pace. We don't have
Yeah.
that person who's going to take anyone on. And I think that's probably the one thing we've really missed a lot on that left-hand side. But yeah, perhaps he's always going to be quite fond for me. He's a player that I've loved since the very moment he got in. When many people doubted him, I was pretty staunch.
Well, he came at a time when he just won the under-21s, under-23s
Yeah,
Euros with Spain, and it was him and Ceballos that came to the Prem. Obviously, Ceballos went to Arsenal, but I remember watching Fornals. They were kind of the two standout players of that
yeah,
tournament. You could tell the technical ability and what level he was coming in. Still at quite a young age, 22, 23 years old when he first came to West Ham. So yeah, it is a shame how it's kind of worked out now. There's no doubt that I think he'll go on to succeed under Pellegrini at Real Betis if he plays him in that kind of, like we say, number 8 role, and he has the freedom to move the ball about in a league that maybe suits him a little bit more. So yeah, let us know your comments. Let us know your thoughts. Sorry, on the whole Pablo Fornals situation. Do you want to see him leave this January, or would you like to keep him and maybe hopefully turn it around and get back into the good books of David Moyes? Don't know. Let us know in the comments. Leave a like on the video as always. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. And Mike, until next time,
come on, you
come on, you
irons.
irons.